Hi, I'm Robert Reich, and I want to talk to you today about the hollowing out of our government. The West Texas Chemical and Fertilizer plant, where at least 15 were killed and more than 200 injured a few weeks ago, had not been inspected fully by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration since 1985. A partial inspection in 2011 had resulted in a $5,000 fine. OSHA and its state partners have a total of 2,200 inspectors. They are charged with ensuring the safety of over 8 million workplaces, employing 130 million workers. That comes, to about one inspector for every 59,000 American workers. So there's no way it can do its job with so few resources. But OSHA has been systematically hollowed out for years under Republican administrations and Congresses that have despised the agency since its inception. In effect, much of our nation's workers' safety laws and rules have been quietly repealed because there aren't enough inspectors to enforce them. That's been the Republican strategy in general. When they can't directly repeal laws they don't like, what do? They repeal them indirectly by essentially hollowing them out. They deny them funds to fully implement those laws, and they reduce funding to enforce the laws. Or consider taxes. Republicans have been unable to round up enough votes to cut taxes on big corporations and the wealthy as much as they'd like. So what do? Well, yes, they complain about IRS picking on some conservative groups. But what they are really doing is hollowing out the IRS. As they cut its enforcement budget, well, presto, tax collections decline. Despite an increasing number of billionaires and multimillionaires using every tax dodge imaginable, laundering their money through phantom corporations and tax havens, remember Mitt Romney's returns? The IRS's budget has been cut by 17% since 2002, and that is adjusted for inflation. To manage the $590 million in additional cuts required by the sequester, the agency has announced it's going to furlough each of its more than 89,000 employees for at least 5 days this year. Now, this budget stinginess doesn't save the government money, quite the opposite. Less IRS enforcement means less revenue. It's been estimated that every dollar invested in the IRS enforcement, modernization, and management system reduces the federal budget deficit by $200. That's a pretty good deal. $1 for $200. And that furloughing 1,800 IRS policemen will cost the Treasury $4.5 billion in revenue. But congressional Republicans are not interested in more revenue. Their goal is to cut taxes on big corporations and the wealthy. Representative Charles Boustany, the Louisiana Republican who heads the House subcommittee overseeing the IRS, he says the IRS sequester cuts should stay in force. He calls for an overhaul of the tax code instead. Now, in a similar matter, congressional Republicans and their patrons on Wall Street who opposed the Dodd-Frank financial reform law, they have been hollowing out the law by making sure agencies charged with implementing it don't have the funds they need to do the job. As a result, much of Dodd-Frank, including the so-called Volcker Rule, restrictions on the kind of derivatives trading that got the street into trouble in the first place, still on the drawing boards. Still not even there, not even being enforced because there's nothing there. Perhaps more than any other law, Republicans hate the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Yet, despite holding more than 33 votes to repeal it, they still haven't succeeded. So what do? They try to hollow it out. Congressional Republicans have repeatedly denied funding requests to implement Obamacare, leaving Health and Human Services, the agency charged with designing the rules under the act and enforcing them, so short-handed it has to delay much of the act. So the Republicans essentially get their way. Even before the sequester, the agency was running on the same budget it had before Obamacare was enacted, and now it has lost billions more. A new insurance marketplace, specifically designed for small businesses, for example, was supposed to be up and running in January, but officials now say it won't be available until 2015 in the 33 states where the federal government will be running insurance markets known as exchanges. This is potentially a large blow to Obamacare's political support, because a major selling point for the legislation had been providing affordable health insurance to small businesses and their employees. But that's exactly what the Republicans are aiming for. The eroding political support is exactly what they want. They fear that Obamacare, once fully implemented, will be too popular to dismantle. So they are out to delay it as long as possible while keeping up a drumbeat about its flaws. Now, repealing laws by hollowing them out, failing to fund their enforcement or their implementation, this strategy works because the public doesn't know it's being done. Enactment of a law attracts attention. Defunding a law attracts no attention at all. It is silent. The strategy also seems to bolster the Republican view that the government is incompetent, because if it can't do what it's supposed to do, keep workplaces safe, ensure that the rich pay taxes they owe, protect small investors, implement Obamacare, then why give it any additional responsibility? But of course the public doesn't know that it's not doing these things because it doesn't have the resources. The public doesn't know the real reason why the government is not doing its job is it is being systematically hollowed out. Thanks.